Yeah?
Daddy got his shoes. Get his shoes.
Should Daddy get his shoes on?
Yeah, get his shoes.
Let's go.
Oh, yes.
Can you open the door?
What?
Open.
Sure.
Alright.
Hey, Daddy. Princess. Our princess.
What's that?
Our princess.
Yeah, you can go. Throw it. Oh,
Let's go.
under the car.
I get it.
Yeah, you can get it.
I can't reach it.
You can't reach it? Let me see what's on the other side.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Come. Is it on the other side?
I can't reach it. Can't reach it. Can't reach it.
Hi, my name's Harry, and today we're going to be doing a review of the Sony A6600 APS-C camera. Let me just start by saying I have no affiliations with this brand, and this is just my opinion on using this equipment or this camera for the last 6 months or so. I have 3 lenses that I use for my camera, or actually I have 4 lenses that I use for the camera. I use the lens that you're seeing me through right now is the Sigma 16mm 1.4 f1.4, and that's just a great vlogging lens. The reason I like that lens so much is because it's very fast and you can get a really nice shallow depth of field, as you can see behind me right now. I also have the Tamron 11-20. That is my primary lens for real estate. I do like a really wide lens. The crop factor, like I mentioned earlier, which is great for getting macro, works against you when you're doing real estate photography, which is why I need an 11mm lens. The Tamron 11-20mm lens that I use for real estate, if you times that 11mm by 1.5, 1.6, you essentially end up with a 16, 17, 18mm focal length when looking through an 11mm lens. And that's because with a smaller sensor, it needs to, there's just a crop factor there that means that if you were to use a full frame camera, you would end up with actual 11mm out of that lens, but because it's on the crop sensor, it gets times by the 1.5 crop factor, if that makes any sense. The other thing that I like about the crop factor, and one of the main reasons why I picked this camera to start off with, was because I use for my macro work a Laowa 65mm 2.8 f 2 times macro, and the reason why I picked that focal length is because most macro is shot at least in about 100mm, whereas because of that crop factor timesing 1.5 times the 65mm focal length of that Laowa lens, it allows me to get roughly about 100mm, but then you're also getting the crop factor that comes with this particular camera body, and it brings things in much closer. And I'll put up some examples of my macro work for you to look at, just so that you can kind of get a rough idea of what it's going to look like with that particular lens. Now, all in all, I do believe that the A6600 is a good camera that verges on enthusiast to intermediate level to professional. It's kind of right in the middle there. It wouldn't be classified completely as a professional camera. I think the A7 series cameras are kind of where you start to find full professional work, but that's not to say that within this compact camera body you are given a lot of professional features. You can shoot in 4K 30 frames a second, or you can shoot in 60 frames at HD, or you can shoot at 120 frames in 1080p, and for YouTube that's more than enough. But when you're talking about, you know, 24 megapixels, you can blow up a pretty big photo of 24 megapixels, but you probably want to stop it around the A2, A3 on the size of paper. Any bigger than that, you're going to start to see flaws. But I do have to say that as a basic all-rounder, this camera is great. And if you're looking for a camera that to give to someone who's starting in photography, to start in digital photography and to start, it offers very, very good video skills and it offers very, very good photography skills. But in order to specialize, you probably need bigger sensors and bigger, if you want a camera that's specifically for photography, then there are some better options out there. And if you want a camera that's specifically for video, there is also some better options out there. Now, the question in everybody's mind is, do I regret buying the A6600 and going APS-C in 2022? And the answer is yes and no. Do I regret going APS-C? No, mostly no. And the reason for that being is that this camera provides a great, general, flexible, compact solution for achieving pretty professional results. I really like this camera because the flexibility that it allows is amazing. How compact it is. I carry a lot of gear. You know, when I go out and I'm following someone around who's chasing snakes and we're making nature videos, I've got to carry a camera, a gimbal, a Insta360, all the accessories that go with that, all the spare batteries that go with that, 2 tripods, a drone, all the drone batteries, all the drone accessories. So I carry a lot of gear, and what was important for me when I picked out this camera was something that's compact, lightweight, and packs a punch. And that's the reason I went with the A6600 versus an A7, because, oh, and on top of that, having a smaller sensor allows you to have cheaper and smaller lenses. So I can get a very, very good mix of versatile lens choices with the A6600 that'll cost probably half to three quarters of the cost of a full frame sensor lens. Would I recommend this camera if I could go back in time? Maybe. It just, for what it is, it works great. I do a lot of astral photography and I find that it works great for that. I do a lot of macro photography and it works great for that. I do a lot of infrared photography and it works amazing for that. So as far as it goes, the A6600 is a great all-round camera. Nothing beats the ability to go and get, you know, a 9mm lens on the Sony, or get there's all these specialty lenses that you can get on the Sony, and specialty shots are kind of what I'm all about. I really love getting shots that are unusual, and you need specialty equipment to get those shots. And the Sony wins out hands down in that department. Another reason why I picked this camera was because here's a chart, and if you look at it, you can see that numbers-wise, this camera stacks up very well against its bigger and more expensive counterparts. Very well, to the point where you almost get, you can look and see that it gets very, very good results all the way along the chart. The A6600 is the master of broadness. And in this, what I've realized is that when you first pick up any camera, it doesn't matter if you get yourself the best camera there is on the market or a medium format camera, or you can spend $10,000 on lenses and you can do all these different things. What I've realized is that each camera and each platform kind of comes with its own level of skill that is needed to get the most out of that equipment. And when I first picked up the A6600, I was instantly met with regret, because I was like, oh, I should have gotten the XT4 because the Fujifilm has just a slightly nicer color science to it, and I should have gotten this, and I should have gotten that instead, and I should have gotten an A7, and I should have gotten, my mind was constantly not satisfied with the cameras straight out of the pictures straight out of the camera. But then I forced myself to just stick to, I'd made my bed and now I have to sleep in it. So I forced myself to keep using this camera, and I realized that in order to get the shots that I liked and the image quality that I liked, it wasn't actually the camera, it was me, and it was my skill level. And now I'm to a point now where I'm competent enough on the camera so that, interestingly, like with the Fuji color science, for instance, when you look deep enough into the Fuji color science and you look at the way that the colors really pop on Fujifilm, whether it be an X100V or whether it be an XD4, you realize that the sensor of the Fujifilm cameras is made by Sony. And then that leads you down this progression of realizing, oh yeah, if it's not so much about it's a tool. Cameras are a tool, and you can achieve those same colors that you see replicated in the Fuji, and you can replicate them in the Sony because they share very similar technology. It's more about the way that you process those images later on, and it's more about raising your skill set within image processing, whether it be in Lightroom or Photoshop or Capture One or whatever you use. And what I've discovered is that a good friend of mine got me onto this whole preset pack of Fujifilm presets that basically replicate, whether it be 400H or Velvir or Provir or whatever those presets that you can get within the camera in Fuji. And once I found out that you can get very close to a Fujifilm presets within the Sony using a Sony sensor, all of a sudden I realized that flexibility that Sony has, despite requiring more effort to achieve those results, you still can get those results, and it's actually become a big plus now to me that I've kind of gone down the Sony path. That's one of the things I love about Sony, is that I wanted a lens for astrophotography, and they have a very, very good results with that. And then they have very, very good infrared results with, there's multiple ways to getting a certain image that you don't necessarily have to take. It's not necessarily always about equipment, and that I think is a very important lesson that I've had to learn as a photographer, is that you don't need the best of everything all the time. Gear acquisition syndrome, GAS, is a real thing, and I kind of have been affected very heavily by it, but I'm starting to realize now that it's not about the gear anymore. It's about updating your own skill as a photographer. That's how you get the best out of your equipment. And with this camera, you can get some very, very professional, amazing results. If you want a camera that's specifically for photography, then there are some better options out there. And if you want a camera that's specifically for video, there is also some better options out there. I hope this video has been useful for you. And if you've liked the content, please like, share, and subscribe. It would help me greatly, as I only have about not even 50 subscribers at the moment. And even one subscriber is a big deal to me these days. So please consider sharing, and subscribing. Thank you.